Hey, what's going on, everyone? Ethan Nader here, and I'm with some of the masterminds behind the new Spektrum 20-channel PowerSafe receiver and the Synapse combo. So I have with me David and Miguel, and I guess without further ado, we'll go ahead and get on into this interview. So David and Miguel, if you all want to introduce yourself and just basically explain what got you all into RC.
Sure. You want me to start? You said David first, so I don't
No,
know.
go for it, David.
Go ahead. I'll start. Yeah.
So
I'm Miguel Alvarez. I'm an electrical engineer and firmware engineer at Horizon Hobby. So a lot of my involvement, I guess, in this project was the hardware designs for the AR2410 receiver and the Synapse module. And then I also worked on the code for that. And then as far as what got me into flying RC, so going a bit more back from this point in time, I know I had always kind of had an interest in RC. I definitely always wanted to be an engineer. And I think it came from like the first time I rode on a plane or something. Like you look out the windows and when you see like when you're in that seat right next to the wings where you see the flaps come up and you see like all the like machinery and everything, and it's like, that's so cool. And we're flying, and I was just like, I want to be an engineer. And so like for the longest time I wanted to be an engineer, and I was interested in planes. But getting into the actual RC plane part was tough for me because I knew no one that, had experience with it. At the time, it was way more cost prohibitive than it was now. But yeah, I started with cars, which is a lot easier to do, and you can beat them around and stuff, and they don't break. But yeah, a plane, you try flying it, and if you're not doing it right, it's just going to instantly break. So I didn't get my first like real plane, which was an Aerobird Extreme. I'm sure David knows what that is. I don't know if you know what that is, Ethan.
I don't. I think that was before my time.
Yeah.
That's a classic.
So that was, this was probably 2006-ish, I think, maybe 2007. So it's basically like just a V-tail plane and then just this big rubber banded wing, no ailerons or anything. And I got this, my parents got me this plane. I had no one to teach me anything. I just went out, tried flying it. The first thing I did was just like full throttle, full elevator, stalled, crashed instantly, and it was like done for.
Man.
And after that, I didn't touch RC planes for like 2 years because the thing was totaled. Like, so yeah, 2 years later, I got re-inspired. I got the parts to fix it, got it fixed, kept kind of like self-teaching through like takeoffs and crashing, and eventually, after multiple repairs, I got it in the air long enough that I could teach myself to fly it, and then after that, it was all good. But yeah, it was a rough first experience, especially like looking now at all the stuff we have to like help beginners, the simulator, and there were simulators at the time. I think I just didn't know about it. They're expensive, so justifying the cost is also difficult. But yeah, like all the safe technology, AS3X and everything now would have made such a huge difference for me.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure like other people went through my experience and just got instantly discouraged. So seeing all that now and working in that is pretty amazing experience, I think, having been on like the other side at one point.
For sure. No, I remember whenever I just kind of got into it, like you said, safe technology would have been so nice to have, especially for the looks of the airplanes, because you almost had to design the airplane around flying stable, whereas now you can basically implement that into the gyro, and in return you got a nice looking airplane. But yeah,
nice. That's kind of my background into getting into RC.
That's awesome. Cool stuff.
So myself, David Payne, I'm the technical director here for product development. I've been at Horizon since 2006, so quite a few years. How I got into RC, I'm actually third generation into it. So my grandfather and my dad were in it. I literally grew up around it. I pretty much live, eat, sleep, breathe aviation for the most part. I grew up on a glider port, actually full-scale glider port. So a lot of my summers, even when I was a kid, I spent my summers not going out and playing with other school kids. I spent them on the farm flying airplanes, right, and building things and making airplanes. And listening to Miguel talk about the trainer side of it, I thought back, and I was before even the corded trainer, right? We were passing the box. I mean, there was no
Yeah.
cord, there was no nothing. You just, hopefully you got the box back if the guy was messing up that was on the other side. So yeah, that was pretty funny.
At least you had someone to pass it to.
Yeah, exactly, right? Exactly, if you had someone to pass it to. But yeah, I grew up flying kind of all the way through it. My family had a hobby shop for a little while. So I went through that, ended up selling the hobby shop, ended up managing that hobby shop, and then ended up doing kind of R&D some for Hobby Lobby for a little while back in the day, and then kind of got recruited into Horizon, and yeah, the rest is history. So
That's cool. That's awesome. So it sounds like two very different ways on getting into RC. You know, you got a third generation, RC pilot, and then somebody over here, just now basically learning by yourself and not really having anybody to teach. So it's cool
Yep.
seeing that diversity, and especially all throughout RC aviation, and just seeing, how people got into it. Like me and my dad got into it together. So it's super cool, super fun hobby for sure. So yeah, I guess we talked about y'all's history into getting into RC. What about how did you get into product development for Horizon Hobby? What ultimately led to that?
So for me, I guess, I kind of never had the mentality of like, I'm gonna do work for one of my hobbies. It was just kind of those things like the hobby's a hobby and work is work. But there was a time in college where I was kind of trying to decide where I'm gonna do internships. I was just like very unsure what I wanted to actually work on, and at that point, I was just like, or I guess before that summer, I was like, I wonder if any RC hobby companies do internships. And obviously, I had already owned a Horizon plane at that two at that point. I had bought a Park Zone Corsair a while after that. But yeah, I checked, and I think the stars kind of aligned because that year Horizon happened to have electrical engineering internships. It's not something we normally do. Like we haven't had internships, I think, for I don't know, since like 2015 or 2016, I think, at least for engineering, the engineering part. So I think the stars just kind of aligned for me. So I applied for that. The engineering manager at the time seemed to really like what my hobby experience and engineering experience. So got the internship, was here for 2 months, and they're really happy with, everything I did. So they made me a job offer contingent on my graduation the next year.
Myself, I like I say, I was I kind of like Miguel though. I don't know that I ever considered, my career, right, as far as product development goes. I kind of fell into it, honestly. I was full-time firefighter. I had a career. I was doing that, but I had started kind of by happenstance at I was traveling around to a lot of events. I was doing development work for Hobby Lobby kind of on the side, but I was also a member of back then it was called Team JR, but now it's Team Horizon, right? But yeah, I was a member of that, traveling around all the time to a lot of events, and met, obviously Pete Goldsmith at the time was the team manager, and we got to know each other really well and became friends. And the next thing I know, I was up here for a visit one time in Illinois just to come hang out with them, and yeah, he smacked me in the back of the head, kind of like, hey, what would you think about coming to Horizon? And Kim and I had a long drive home that night going, man, is this what we want to do? Right. So we were in Tennessee. I mean, it was, you changed everything all at once kind of thing, because we were just about to get married. So it was get married, move across the country. It was a big change, but it was well worth it in the end. I really do. It's a great career. I agree. It's a lot of fun. You meet a lot of cool people, and kind of like Miguel's mentioned, and Ethan, yourself. I mean, it's a group of people made up from all over the place and all kind of walks of life that just are super passionate about the hobby.
Mm-hmm. That's a great way to explain it. It's the passion is incredible within this hobby. It's one of those things that you just have to get into it to understand the camaraderie and the family. There's nothing like it. Oh man, so fun.
Agree. Yeah.
Cool stuff. Yeah, so I guess we heard a little bit about the history of you two and how, you came to work for Horizon and getting into product development. Was there ever a time where, the thought of, or I guess the idea per se, the idea of the Synapse kind of came to mind? Like I know you have safe technology and AS3X, was there a point in time where you thought that the Synapse is just something that had to happen, you know?
I feel like I've kind of got like a long answer for this, and I think there's probably some like, you know, David and I's my paths have combined, and at this point, like,
yeah, that's what I
feel
was
like there's
wondering.
a lot of back and forth we can have in answering this question.
Yeah,
sure.
But I'll start a little bit, and David, we might have different perspectives too. I think Synapse probably was always bound to happen, especially after the AS3000, the previous generation PowerSafes with the AS3000. Once that kind of got discontinued for like chip shortage reasons and just having to update, like, you know, we obviously always want to make new stuff.
For sure.
I think it had to happen. We knew it had to happen. I think we just didn't really know at the time what it was going to become. Like there's the idea of starting it, and then there's what actually it ended up being.
Yeah.
So Synapse was always going to happen, but
Yeah.
what it turned into is totally different story. And I think, like, I guess I could go over what the original plan was and what it ended up being if you want. I don't know if that's like too long, or
sure.
David, you have any thoughts on that? But
I mean, I think you're touching on the whole. I agree with you completely, right? I mean, when 3000 went into life, right, we knew we had to do something new, but I think that's kind of part of the cool factor is you know, I think all of us are always thinking, okay, what's next? How do we improve it? How do we do something even better, right? I've been fortunate enough to see the whole iteration of Safe since day one with the Apprentice, and to this point, right? I think every time we get done with one of these projects, we go, how can we do something better than that? It's so cool, right? But then, I don't know. I think for a lot of us, it's a month or two down the road, you're already going, okay, we could do this, we could do that, we can, you know, change this. And yeah, I agree with you, Miguel. It was going to happen for sure. What it became, I think, is much more of an evolution than what we thought at first, probably.
Yeah.
I think that the tricky part with that, and a lot of where everyone's passion on all levels of the company comes into it, is there was already a gap in our lineup with the AS3000 gun where like we needed this ASAP. But like David said, we always want to make stuff better. And so I think there's like an iteration of this where like, okay, you get new receiver hardware and a new sensor, and you pull the new AS3X code, which is what was in the 637, 10360, because that was like a new generation already from what the AS3000 was. And so I think originally that's what we were going to do. But then like somewhere halfway through that, it was like, all right, I kind of want to make this better. I know David wants this to be better. I'm sure other people want this to be better. So there was like a point halfway through the development where it was like, you know, give me a chance to do like a proof of concept, improved algorithm. There's like all these things I know we can already make better that I've thought of. Give me a chance to do this, and we'll see what happens. And it's kind of crazy if you consider the fact that we already needed to fill a product in the lineup. And, you know, it's a business. Like, you know, as much as we all want to just do things that we want, we have to consider the business side of things. Yeah. And so when that proposition was made and they're like, all right, yeah, we'll give you some time to work on that, I was like, my mind was blown. I was like, no way.
This is happening.
It probably helped that at the time, this was like just as COVID was ending. And so there was like chip shortage issues anyway that were kind of a factor. So that was probably maybe like, all right, well, this is going to get delayed anyway. Let's throw this in and see if we can make it better. But yeah, I spent some time doing like algorithm changes and stuff. I handed it to David. We tuned a plane, and like once he tried it and got a feel for it, and then other people felt it, it was like the rest is history. Like, yeah, we're going through with these improvements. And I think it was just a matter of like putting all the time and effort into, like, surprisingly, the actual development of the new algorithm didn't take that long. It was the refining and making it good for like a variety of models, not just the one. Because you could, like, at the time when I had that initially, you would have to fine tune it for that one model. But once it was fine tuned, it was insanely better than like what we had before.
Right.
But people like trying that and feeling it just gave everyone like the motivation to justify like, yeah, let's delay this longer to make this even better than we originally planned.
Wow.
Yeah, I think
Cool.
there's a big value to, like, Miguel and I worked a lot together. We worked very closely together, and
Oh yeah,
there's a big value to both of us. I think we get along real well, but he, for an engineer to be able to go out and fly with you and kind of stand next to you and understand what you're seeing, and to be able to explain and talk the same language, right, is sometimes a challenge between that kind of situation and relationship. But I think for us, it became, it worked well together, and we were able to kind of explain, okay, I see this side, you see this side, and yeah, I think it ended up becoming a really good thing pretty quickly. I said early on in any kind of project like this, you have to kind of be able to imagine the future, right? Like Miguel's saying, you had to tweak it to get it to that point, right? And you
Right.
kind of had to be able to go, yeah, we can get to that point to where a customer can just turn on the knob and go.
David and I became really close throughout this whole development process because we worked really closely together. Like David has an insane perception and just like a good eye for seeing minute details in the way a model behaves that I don't see. And like I'll eventually see it. I have to understand it and see it to be able to make the changes required. But he'll like be like, "Oh, it does this," and I'm like, I don't understand what you're saying. Why would it do that?" And I'll be out at the field with him, and he'll have to show me like the same maneuver like 5 times in a row before I finally spot that little detail he's calling out. And I'm like, man, like I would never be able to perceive these things, like spot these things on my own. And so having that like that very detailed feedback and just being able to perceive those things to the point, like I'm sure most people that touch this wouldn't be able to notice that, but when you put all those little details together, it's an insane amount of improvement that like you feel.
Yeah, for sure. And that's one thing that I noticed too. Whenever I was fortunate enough to get to test it out a little bit before it came out, and I remember I threw it into my 106 Raven, and I know for a fact I've never messed with gyros before, and I know for a fact that I did not set it up right, but still I took off and it felt great in my opinion. And I know I talked with you a little bit, Miguel, on fine tuning it, and it made it even better. But the crazy part is, like you said, you can fine tune it to be amazing, but even out of the box, you can just seems like you could just throw it into just about anything and it already improves it. Like, it was really impressive.
I think that was part of the biggest challenge for us, right? Miguel and I spent a ton of time, actually. There's actually many people going into this part to get to that point, but
Yeah.
we wanted it to be kind of like what you're saying, Ethan. We wanted it to be simple out of the box, and where pretty much most people could just toss it in there, adjust the gain, and go. I mean, that was the critical step, right? I mean,
Yeah.
for success for everybody, that first initial impression and that kind of finding that balance where for most airplanes it was great right out of the box, right? I mean, yeah, there's so much capability in this new system, and you can take it and fine tune it to the last little percent of what you feel like is perfect, right? But for most people, they just kind of want to stick it in. They want to turn the gain to a number and they want to go fly. And we spent a lot of time trying to find that balance so they could do that.
So much time.
Oh, I'm sure.
Because it's not even just one model. It's like very like with warbirds, EDFs, turbine jets, 3D planes. Like it's such a wide range of models, and having that to the point where you can set a gain and maybe the gain multiplier also, depending on how sensitive the plane is, just being able to adjust that and have it feel great. It took a lot of, I would say, fine tuning those parameters to get to that point took more effort than actually developing the algorithm changes themselves.
I bet. Yeah, and like you said, just I'm sure it was a challenge to get to that point, but man, it's got to be so worth it. I'm sure you all agree.
The feedback's been amazing.
Yeah, especially, I feel like if you do, let's say the Synapse, for example, you couldn't throw it into an airplane and right away, you could get to a point where it would tune good, but just the first impression, if it wasn't that good out of the box, it might set somebody back and kind of lower their expectations a little bit, or even lower their hope for what it can be. But whenever it flies that good out of the box, like I said, whenever I threw it into my 3D airplane, never messing with the gyro before, I was expecting to get some different feedback. I mean, I guess with the history of helicopters, I'm used to throwing in a flybarless unit and right out of the box, there was going to be a shake or an oscillation or something weird. But, I had the gyro off, I took off, flew around, flipped it on. I was like, wow, this thing's, it's tracking good. It's, it locks in on its snaps, and I was really impressed. And just out of the box, I was thinking, holy cow, if it flies this good out of the box, I can't wait to fine tune this thing. It almost motivated me to want to tune it and learn it more. Whereas if I had that impression out of the box that I don't know how this feels, it might, hold me back as far as, determination to tune it,
I think it's very important, right? I mean, stabilization systems have become the norm across the board for
Right.
all of the industry, right? So one of the big challenges, and I think something all of us wanted to do on the team was to make so much of a difference that you just noticed it right off the bat, right? You were like, wait, this is different.
Yeah, no, I hear you. And that's what I did, especially on a 3D plane. I'd say it's probably the least complex in terms of airplanes and stability. It already felt
It's actually one of the most challenging though to tune for.
Oh, I believe it.
Yeah.
I believe it, because I feel like in the 3D world, my mindset would be, okay, it's a lot easier to just turn the gyro off and enjoy it like that. Whereas whenever I turned the Synapse on, I thought, man, I really, I want to see what this thing can do, rather than, oh, I'm not too sure how it feels, I'm just going to turn it off and enjoy the airplane, how it is, which you can certainly do in terms of 3D planes. But I don't know, my curiosity just spiked with the Synapse, and I think a lot of it too is I never really used the gyro before in my 3D airplanes, and turning it on, it was like, holy cow, this thing is locked in. I want to tune this thing and really fine tune it and see what it can do, because if it does this out of the box, oh my gosh, this is incredible. But yeah, for
That's
sure.
Good. It's good to hear that kind of drove that inspiration into you instead of just being kind of pushed away from it. Because one of the things, like David mentioned, we have a lot of back and forth, and we actually clash a lot on different opinions of what we want versus what's best for the user. Like, I'm an engineer, obviously, like I'm a power user. I want all the options, all the tunability. And David's kind of on the side of like, be careful. You put too much stuff in there and you're giving people more ways to break it. And
I mean,
so
it's funny,
kind of like,
I'm very much like Miguel in a lot of ways. I want all that adjustment too, but I'm trying to protect the customer out there and keep it simple. And that, we have to find a balance sometimes. And it's cool though, because of that, right? It ends up in a good place, I think.
It's like he understands what the customer wants, and but he also appreciates what I'm trying to kind of push for. And we spend a lot of discussion time just finding a way to like find a good balance to where I think we make both sides of the like both customer types happy.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, that, like you said, you two might clash on some things, but in the end, whenever you find that common ground, basically the Synapse was the result, and it was awesome. Like I said, go ahead.
I was just going to say, it was great to hear that having it just that basic performance made you inspired to want to go and mess with the fine tuning and like see what more it could do instead of like scaring you away from it.
For sure. And I was super impressed. I can't stress that enough. Y'all did amazing on that. Just being able to do that, get that performance out of the box it's really impressive. And I guess that's going to lead into my next question, which you might have already explained a little bit, but was there a particular point with the development of the Synapse that was just really challenging to you all? Did it have to be with hardware wise, or I know even, like you said, during COVID, the chip shortage, I guess, is there anything that proved to just be really challenging with the development of the Synapse?
Working with David was very challenging.
The feeling's mutual.
Yeah.
Man.
And, like, it's not in a bad way. It's like I said, we clash a lot, but the end result, I think, is the best that you could hope for the end user. Finding that balance of opinions and perspectives, and also just push, like David, he's very perceptive, like I said earlier, and like noticing these things, and that makes him very critical of everything. He's like very I don't know if OCD is the right word, but like he pushes for perfection, right?
For sure, for sure.
And so yeah, so that makes it, in a sense, it makes it challenging, but it's not in a bad way. I'm not saying I don't like working with David. It's just kind of like,
Right.
striving for the best and pushing for the best, So that kind of that part, and just what we mentioned earlier of like fine tuning and finding the right balance for like most models just from the defaults and just adjusting a game. I think that overall is probably the toughest challenge in this.
I agree. I think the biggest, probably the one, and Miguel said it earlier, the one we probably spent the most time on was just we flew and flew and flew and flew so many different airplanes to try to narrow in on that kind of happy medium where most of the stuff would just work out of the box, right? Because it was really important to us. Because if there's just so many people out there nowadays that if they have a bad experience or it's too confusing or too much work, right? Too much effort. You have to go do certain things and go through certain processes to get to the end result. They're just, they're put off by it, right?
Yeah.
So
For sure.
yeah, it was real important for us to get a very simple, very quick enjoyment, right? Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. Like you said, you could basically enjoy the Synapse for what it is out of the box. You can always enjoy it. And then from there, you can
take it to any
and
level
enjoy.
you want, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's crazy what it can do. But out of the box, to be able to put it, install it in the airplane, basically assign a gain channel, walk through the first time setup steps, and go fly. And on a lot of cases, one flight, and you're going to be done. You're going to find the gyro setting you want, and that's it. You don't have to do it again, right?
Yeah.
You don't have to touch it. You can enjoy your model from then on out.
Yeah. No, for sure. And that's basically what I did with mine. I took off and, basically adjusted the knob, found the game that I liked, basically landed and, basically put in those settings on the Synapse and just enjoyed the airplane. And then I talked with Miguel later. I was, thinking, oh, I'm going to mess with it makes you want to fine tune more, like the stop lock, those kinds of gains. But you don't even have to do that to enjoy the Synapse. That's what's so cool about it. Yeah. And yeah, it was.
I do appreciate that side of it, that out of the box you can enjoy it, but if there's the guy out there or a person that just really wants it a certain way, you have that ability also, right?
For sure.
And I think now there's so much more adjustment than what we had in the AS3000. I mean, you can really fine tune it to your personal preference without giving up the benefit and the performance of the gyro itself.
Yeah, like you said, I guess it points out, like you said, the difference in opinions in terms of, what you want to see in terms of setups. It goes to show back to the family orientation of her, basically the RC hobby. It's like brothers. You go back and forth or something like that. But at the end of the day, you got each other's backs, and look at the amazing product that came out of it too, and working together.
I mean, when you go to these events and you watch people and you watch their experiences, it becomes more and more important to understand that and appreciate, each one has a different opinion. They have a different flying style. They have a different model that they want to fly and how they want to fly it. So
yeah,
it's a challenge to give them all of that into one box, but yeah.
For sure. Oh man, Joe Null is going to be fun this year, going around
I can't wait.
See all kinds of different airplanes that people are.
This is the coolest part for us. I mean, I think, in product development in general, right? Once you announce something and you see the reactions, or you get to go watch somebody enjoy it and experience it, and if they have this great experience with it, that makes it all worth it, right?
I'm sure. Yeah. That's awesome. Oh man. Yeah, I guess speaking of all the different airplanes that the Synapse gonna potentially be in, I guess that'll bring us to our final question, which is there a specific aircraft in any of y'all's fleet? It might not even have to be your fleet, but just a particular aircraft that you've flown and you thought, man, the Synapse changed this airplane. It might have flown good before, but holy cow, it flies great now.
So actually, one interesting, I'm kind of more like the amateurish hobbyist compared to David and yourself, for example. So during the development of the AR2410T receiver and the Synapse, I built my first turbine jet. So this was September 2022. And at that point, coincidentally, the hardware, we had already received the first set of prototype samples for the hardware. There was one hardware issue on the receiver itself that I had to correct. But in the meantime, I cut like a bunch of traces and did some jumper wire stuff and everything to like fix it. And then I ended up just putting that in my first jet.
That's awesome.
Yep.
Like the receiver was like just flyable, and I mean I trusted it enough at that point that I was like, I'm gonna put this in my jet. I'll do all the ground tests and everything. I'll fly it in a foamy first just to make sure. But I had that in the jet before the stabilization code was even there. So this was like just bare bones receiver, no stabilization. And then that jet, like we're now in 2024, the final release, that jet went through all the firmware iterations from the first implementation of stabilization to then what it ended up becoming, the stabilization being, the new AS3X Plus. But yeah, that jet kind of saw the whole cycle of the development. So I didn't get to go from like a nothing to full stabilization and seeing that transition, but I did get to see it kind of improving over time and going through all those iterations.
You got to watch it develop through the airframe itself. That's awesome. That's cool.
And the airframe survived that whole process.
Nice. Funny enough, you say turbine. I have yet to fly a turbine or even own one. But
we got to fix that. We can fix that next time you're up here. Yeah.
Oh, shoot. Well, might have to hit you up on that.
The funny thing about that is this turbine is also a thrust vectored jet. And one of the features we introduced with the Synapse and AS3X Plus is the ability to set up multiple gyro systems in one set of hardware. So it's basically the same as if you took 4 different gyro systems and put them in one plane. This has them all in, one set of hardware. So
wow.
I have the thrust vectoring set up with that feature on the second gyro system to handle the thrust vectoring on that. So that to me was a very cool implementation, a new feature that I also got to prototype on my first jet as well. That's
cool. That's really cool.
I think it's hard to say which one is like my favorite necessarily, because like Miguel, right? I got to see many airplanes because we did just that, right? We would fly an airplane with nothing. We would fly with AS3X, then we'd fly with AS3X Plus, right? So we could kind of see the jump and we could see what it changed. And I mean, honestly, any airplane is going to fly better, in my opinion, right? It's how it makes it fly better. Like Miguel's saying, you have the ability to do so much now, whether it's thrust vectoring and fine tuning, but even the simplest airplanes, like we'll take a Pitts, for instance, right? A 4-channel Pitts, right? It's short, it's squirrely, it's known to be kind of a live wire. It locks it in and it makes it so much. It's just a much better experience.
Yeah,
but
for sure.
Or any, I mean, I know right now we'd mentioned, can't wait for Jonal. I agree, but I'm in change all my airplanes over mode because I want the Synapse in all of them before we go to Jonal, right? Because I know it's going to be a better airplane.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, like you said, and even I guess in the 3D world, one thing that I love about it is I talked about it. I think I shot a video with Tom, and he asked me one of my favorite features about the Synapse in terms of 3D airplanes. And honestly, my favorite thing about it is it widens up the flight envelope. Some 3D planes are geared more towards high energy, but might be a little unstable, low and slow, or vice versa. You might have one, that's really floaty, really locked in, low and slow, but whenever you try to, do some snap rolls or even XA, it might be a little sloppy on that. Whereas you throw the Synapse in there, it'll widen up that flight envelope. If you need it to lock in at higher speeds or even down low, you can just widen up the flight envelope with it. And it's really cool. It's really cool.
Yeah. I think it's neat to be able to see, like you said, aerobatic airplanes are better. I mean, jets are better. I don't know that there's anything that's not going to improve, honestly. We've already got, Miguel and I were talking at lunch today. We've got some of our sailplane guys are already starting to try it, and they're finding all these kind of other neat features to use, right? I mean, even like safe, right? Safe's in the Synapse, and people are like, well, what are you doing with that? But Miguel, was talking about, we've got one of our glider guys. I mean, he's got safe on his glider. I mean, it's you got endless opportunity with it.
Yeah, for sure. I know a lot of people I saw were questioning the safe. And honestly, I've had experiences, it's happened to me where, if it's a cloudy day or something like that, and you're flying a 3D plane or even any monoplane or a jet for that matter, sometimes you can't really tell if it's going towards you or going towards away, or going away from you. If it's upside down, it just looks the same. It's just hard to tell. it's good to have, safe in the back of your, basically in the back of your transmitter, just to flip it and, okay, it's upright right now.
Yep.
I can determine,
I
okay,
mean,
it's flying away.
yeah.
It helps.
Did you get a bug in your eye, sunscreen in your
Yeah,
eye? I mean, it's as simple as
anything.
that even, right? I mean, but
No,
it's,
yeah, for sure.
or I mean, to the point, okay, well, here's my super nice jet, but I want to let my buddy try it. Well, you can kind of use that as almost like training wheels, right? So he
Yeah,
can't get in
yeah.
really bad trouble, but he can experience it and kind of get the feel for it. And you don't have to worry as much about, uh-oh, what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Super simple to install, super simple to set up.
Yeah.
It's right there in your transmitter. You don't have to have anything extra. I mean, it's
Yeah,
convenient.
I remember whenever I was testing it, I thought to myself, I was like, this is the weirdest thing ever, having a 3D airplane with safe. I'd never done it before. I got a big 120cc airplane, but it's got safe on it. It just feels weird. But then, the more that I thought about it, it's good to have. It's definitely good to have. Like you said, if you want to let your
And you don't
buddy
have
try
to
to
use it,
fly
right?
it,
If you
or
don't want to use it,
oh no, for
it's not
sure.
going to
Yeah, just
affect
keep it
you. It's
off.
not something you have to set up on the first time setup. You literally don't ever have to interact with it at all unless you choose to.
Yeah, definitely.
There's one
really
feature
cool
in Safe that I feel like most people don't realize is an option. At least people maybe not super familiar with our bind and flies, for example. But when you set up fail safes, like normally you set either a preset position or hold last for just the ailerons or whatever as it is. But with Safe, you have the option to set up a safe fail safe where your plane will level out if for
Okay.
whatever reason you lose signal, instead of just falling over.
Yeah.
And you can even set like a roll angle to just kind of make it loiter a little bit or something, like not just go off in a straight line. Like there are a lot of ways to use Safe other than just I'm a beginner pilot and
Initial
it helps
training.
me practice.
Yep.
There's so many like utility type features that make it useful for professional experienced pilots.
That's really cool. Yeah, because on most of my, or pretty much all my fail safes, I'll set it up as, preset and try to keep all the surfaces neutral. But, if you're in the middle of a 3D maneuver or something like that, it's really not going to matter. It might turn it into a lawn dart. Whereas, like you said, the safe fail safe, it'll level itself out and kind of loiter or, basically do whatever you need it to do. That's really cool.
Yeah. You just set like the preset angles you want it to target and it'll do that.
That's really impressive. Got to set my airplane up for that. Like you said, it makes you determined to do it. That's super cool. Wow. That's awesome. Wow. Yeah. Well, hey, I really appreciate you all taking the time, and hopefully for those watching, kind of got to see how the Synapse came to be and basically learned a little bit more on some of the masterminds behind it, right? And how they got into the RC hobby, and also how they started, basically working for product development within Horizon, and, basically, the difference of views, how their roads essentially turned into one road, and how the Synapse was born. So I really appreciate you all taking the time, and man, it gets me ready for event season and just getting some more time on the Synapse. And, a lot of people are now pretty much already flying their planes with them. I know the first shipment, it's already out, and people, hopefully people resonate with, how you can just take it out of the box and enjoy it. And it only gets better from there, right? It's awesome.
Yeah. So far, the feedback's been pretty good. I don't think I've seen anything bad yet, which is always very nice. So you're always nervous. Like, even if you're like very confident in a new product, there's always like one person that finds something to not like about it. But I don't, obviously it's still very new, but I don't think I've seen anything yet.
That's awesome. Yeah, definitely no complaints here. I've really been enjoying mine. Honestly, I'm ready to take it out of my Raven and put it into another plane just to try it out, just see how it behaves with all the different airplanes. But yeah, no, you all did a really
jet. I didn't realize you had a full one, so we're gonna have to get that fixed.
Oh boy.
It's a slippery slope though. You may leave 3D behind once you do this.
Now I want a bigger jet. I said I'll just get this small jet and just have that jet. No, now I want a bigger one. It's dangerous.
Oh boy. I got the perfect gyro for it too, so
right
there we go. Oh man, yeah, seriously, thank you all for taking the time, and hopefully you all enjoy the rest of your day, and I just really appreciate it. Hopefully everybody gets to learn a little bit more about the Synapse and how it became to be. So yeah, thank you all, really appreciate it.
Thanks everyone.
Thanks.